Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have you again in another Ask Me Anything for technology projects on this beautiful spring morning. Feels like spring has finally sprung in Calgary, Alberta, where I'm broadcasting from today. It's a lovely sunny day, and welcome to a few folks joining the call here. Just popping in on the chat, and can see some questions coming in as well. We've got a few questions sent in advance. So a few folks sent a DM on a couple of questions they wanted to answer on this session. So I'm going to cover a couple of key topics around why do technology projects appear to be so complicated? Why are they so complex? And then I'm also going to dive into what are the biggest gotchas or pitfalls of technology projects as well. That was a common question that I saw a theme coming out, so I figured I'd summarize that for you folks today. The goal of these sessions is always just to share my knowledge. So I've been working on technology projects for over 25 years, seen lots of different projects of all shapes and sizes, seen a lot of how people react on projects, working with project teams and different technologies, different industries. So figured let's share this with you folks, because if you can understand what I've learned, so you can share, get my feedback on toolkits, frameworks, then you don't have to go through the learning. You can accelerate your journeys on technology projects. And of course, if you wanted to chat more about anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat and share knowledge. That's one of my stages in life right now. We're in the pay it forward and share information period of my life. So I'm just waiting a few other people joining in here as well. Good to see. And a couple of just scanning down the questions. Always a good check to make sure the technology is working. I'm pretty sure I did a test before, and I'm pretty sure this is live with audio and video. But just drop a comment if you're not hearing this properly. But you never know with technology, right? That's why we have a job, because it's so complicated and sometimes it doesn't quite go to plan. But I think we're good. So what I'm going to do now is jump into it. Got a couple of the questions coming in, and also got it. Like I said, there's a couple of people that emailed me in advance, DM'd me with some questions. So I'm going to answer those for sure. And I'm going to cover two key topics today. One is around what makes technology projects so complicated, and also how to set up your projects for success with the right leadership team. And I'll share some information on that. So let's jump into it. So as always, it's how you feel about technology. I love technology, but like anything, it can be very, very frustrating. It can feel overwhelming. But the point of technology is, there's a quote, I can't remember who it's from, but they said, you can't uninvent technology, which I think is really telling, actually, because once technology is invented, you have to run with it. It has to go forward. You can't uninvent technology. And so that then comes down to our personal lives and our work lives. So we're always using new technology. So that's that third point around future-proofing your career. I'm a firm believer that having awareness of how we use technology in the right way is absolutely key to our careers and futures, and giving us learning opportunities. I love the idea of learning more and more as I continue my career. And technology is a fascinating learning opportunity. In a future session, I'm a big fan of blockchain technology and where that can take us with cryptocurrency, given the news at the moment around some of the banking crisis. It's interesting to see the crypto market is actually on a bit of a bull run. So next week, I think I'm going to actually dive into blockchain a bit more and just share some of what I've seen real world applications of blockchain in business. And then we can briefly touch on cryptocurrency if anyone has any specific questions on that, about security, safety, or even just what it is, how it works. Because lot to learn. I'm still learning on it, but I really enjoy that topic. So right now, let's actually just jump into the first question. So this came in from on the direct chat to me, on a direct DM on the LinkedIn. And the question was, why are technology projects so complicated? And I'm sure we've all been there. We've all been frustrated with technology projects. Just seems, why are they so difficult compared to other projects out there? And I'd say the key reason actually is, at the end of the day, technology projects are complicated because we're doing it new for the first time. If you think about a project, and especially technology, we've never done this before. The whole point of a project is it's a unique endeavor, a unique activity with a fixed duration. That's the classic definition of a project that I really like, a unique activity with a fixed duration. And the reason it's unique is because we want to implement something new, a new system, new functionality, new application. It could be an enterprise system, could be something as simple as just upgrading a system, but either way, it's new. And because it's new, we have to set expectations with people and work through what's going to change, how it's going to work. So what I always like to do is make sure that change is well understood and work through expectations with people. So part of technology projects, the biggest learning I have is around managing communications and stakeholders. The clients and customers are involved in technology. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to frame this slightly differently. I'm actually going to frame this as 5 pitfalls to watch out for with technology, because so much to cover with why is it so complicated. So let me make it really straightforward for you folks and break it down into 5 key pitfalls to avoid on projects. So the first one is thinking that technology projects are all about technology. Sounds counterintuitive because that's the point of a technology project. So, but what I would say is more often than not, we get too focused on the technology. We jump into the technical solution, the shiny object, what's exciting about going live with a new technology, be it a new application or system. So we get focused in the technology, and we then often forget about the result, the end benefit for the client or customer. So we get too wrapped up in the day-to-day grind. Sometimes they are a grind sometimes of running these projects. The analogy I like to do is when you were a kid, if you spent too much time playing a video game and you forgot to do your homework. If you're doing the video game, you're forgetting about the bigger picture around homework's important. And that's what we do sometimes with technology projects. We get too zoomed in on the project and the technology. So we focus on the build, the testing, the day-to-day issues, as opposed to why are we doing this? And the biggest way to reset this is, as a project manager or a sponsor or someone involved in the project, is to take a step back. Think about how the project is benefiting the customer, the end user, and what product are you delivering, and go back to the goals. The goals of the project are very, very important. And we often lose sight of that because it becomes about the technology, not the goals. So what we need to do is just make sure you reset the team and what you're delivering on your end goals. And that'll help clear a lot of roadblocks. I often see teams get bogged down in analysis paralysis around solving a specific issue, when in reality, it doesn't really add that much value to the end goal. So if you're losing sight of the technology, if you're losing sight about the end goal and it's all about the technology, just do that reset on why you're doing this project and the end result for the customer. Second pitfall is around different expectations. So we often have, as a team coming together, doesn't matter if it's a small team or a large team, we often have differing expectations about what this project will create and deliver. People see things through the world differently. I've got a great graphic, actually. I might share it on my Twitter feed and LinkedIn tomorrow, actually, around if you different people can interpret things differently. And there's the picture is of 5 blind men touching an elephant. They're touching different areas of an elephant. So one is touching the tail and thinking this is rope. One is touching the skin and thinking this is just leather. One is touching the trunk and thinking this is a snake. One is touching the foot and thinking this is a tree. So the point is, everyone's got a different perspective on that one situation. And this is where a project manager comes in. This is where the project manager really shines, because you need to align those expectations. You need to get everyone talking and thinking and looking in the same direction. And it's constant. This is not easy, folks. This is not a send the goals and you're done. You have to do constant communication with everyone over and over again. The analogy I like to do on this one is if you are planning a camping trip for your friends or family, but then some of the group think that this is going to be a survival challenge, the more adventurous of your group, whereas others thought this might be an RV by the lake. So the differing, if you say camping trip, what does that mean? People think it's different. So again, related to point one there, always think about the goals and then bring that into the expectations of people and keep resetting on that. And more importantly, ask them what they're expecting. Just do an honest conversation. Say, hey, we're partway through the project and this technology is being implemented. What's most important to you? I love that question. What's most important to you? Okay, we'll move on to the third one. So the third one here, just going to bring it up, is around not expecting issues, which I know sounds obvious. Why wouldn't you expect issues on a technology project? And the point is, I think people always expect issues. They always expect problems. They always think things can go wrong. That's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is that everyone expects issues, but they don't necessarily know how to deal with it well when the issues happen. And that's the important point, is we get wrapped up in the drama, the intensity and the challenge of working through a problem when we have an issue. And again, we lose sight on that end build. So everyone knows that issues are coming along, but they get caught up in the moment. We often spend sometimes too long solving a problem. And again, it always comes, again, a similar analogy here. If it's like when you're a kid, if you're building a tower out of Lego blocks, and then suddenly your younger brother or sister just comes along and smashes that tower down. You know what I mean? You know that might happen, but when it happens, you get really frustrated. I've been through that a couple of times myself, where my brother's smashed up my Lego just because he thought it was fun, and I got really, really angry. So again, I knew that might happen, but it didn't stop me getting angry. So how do we apply that to our technology projects? Is we always just tie it back to that business goal, that project goal, the outcome that we want to see. We want to make sure that we're solving the right problem and not spending too much information, not time on it. So one of the questions I like to ask my team when we're working through a challenge or an issue and it's hair on fire, we've got a deadline to work against, is the question is, do we need to get more information or do we need to act on the information? So I love this question. Do we need more information or do we need to act on the information? Because again, is the bottleneck around strategy? Do we need more information to make a strategic decision? Or is the problem around not acting on information? So we have enough information, we just need to start working through it. So again, a great question for your teams when you're working through issues is, where are we right now and what do we need to do next? So that was point number 3, not expecting issues. So now let's go back to number 4, which is missing the bigger picture. Sounds obvious, right? That the team will miss that bigger picture. But again, it's when we're in the weeds up against deadlines, it's so often so easy. We're not looking above the wall of our project. We're not seeing what else is going on in the company, the environment, the economics. Could be a macroeconomic change. Could be just a shift in the culture of the company. I've been in projects where delivering the technology solution, but the project, the whole company is going through a downsizing. They're letting staff go. So that creates a real shift of tone in the project because, yes, the project has funding, but for how long? So people on the team start to question how long they have a job for. And that affects morale. So again, it's you as a project manager or you're working with the leaders on a project. And to be honest, anyone on the project needs to maintain that sight of what else is going on in the company where you're delivering your project. Because sometimes, again, we get too focused on our own project. We think our project is the bee's knees. It's everything that we need to focus on. But what if another project comes along and changes the date on it, does a go live or a product delivery or launch at the same date? You need to adjust for that. You don't wait until 2 weeks before your launch to find that you're the same time as another product launch. So it's like I always like to bring us back to analogies. So analogy here is, it's like if you made a really cool website, but then forgot to tell anyone about it. They don't know to go and look at that website. So again, it's just making sure that not only you focus on your delivery, but making sure you have awareness of everything else going on in your company, the environment, the people, the culture. Just make sure you bring in that bigger macro view. And then let's jump into number 5 here, the final one, which is of the 5. These are the top 5 that I've seen over my career. Losing customer focus. So again, this is where we focus too much on the project and the technology. But an easy way to do this is we just forget it. We get wrapped up in delivery and don't look at what we're actually building, the product, the end result. Because even if it's really, really cool, if people don't like it or can't use it because it's too complicated or difficult to use, the project's gonna fail. We might have a great idea at the beginning, but if the implementation makes it overcomplicated or just not what we wanted, it's not going to work. It's like if you invented a new game. Again, I always go back to being a child and a kid. If you invented a new game, but no one played it because it was too complicated, you spent all that time creating this amazing new game, but no one's playing it because it's complicated. So again, from a customer client point of view, if they can't use your product because it's too complicated, that's when it becomes a problem. It's if the project is failing. So the easy way to make sure that you get through this is just to involve the customers and the clients and the product owners all the way through the project. Back to some key roles, which I'm going to come on to on the second question, is which key roles do you need? Definitely the customer and the product owner, someone involved in using your end result, your product, after the project is delivered, because they can give you huge, great insights on what's going to be valuable. More importantly, they also help with testing, making sure when you're building the technology solution, they're actually testing it to make sure it does exactly what you set out to do. It helps you realize the benefits. So in summary, it's all about making sure your technology project is successful by avoiding these 5 pitfalls. So making sure that everyone agrees on what you're trying to be doing. Be ready for unexpected problems. Making sure you're focusing on the problem itself, and the benefit, not the technology. And then looking at that bigger picture as well. So making sure it's something that people want, and it's not going to be side railed by any other projects or any other factors like cultural or economic, as well as what's going on in the business, in the client, in the company as well. And again, I always like to just wrap this up with a kid analogy. So it's like when you're building a cool robot with your friends, you want to make sure it's fun, easy to use, and more importantly, the robot won't break immediately out of the box. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of 5 pitfalls to avoid. So I'm just going to quickly look at the chat here. Let's just zoom out a second. We'll take a look at what's going on around the questions coming in here, because I want to make sure I answer your burning questions. So thank you to those folks who sent in the questions in advance and posting questions here. Just working through. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just reiterating, just to go back to that. Let me go back here. Just to go back to that point number 5 there, making sure you don't forget the customer. There's a couple of comments there around, it's so easy to forget the customer, especially when you get into the weeds of the day-to-day delivery or testing or going live. You've got enough on your plate. The last thing you want to do is add more questions into the project by bringing in other questions. So it feels tough to do because it's a busy time of the project, but so important. And another point there around technology is just complicated, which it is. It does create a challenge, because at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, this is new, unique. You've never done these technology projects before. Even if it's a simple upgrade, that's why every project is unique. It might be similar to a previous project you've done, but every project is unique. So it takes a lot of planning up front. So for the second part of this session, what I wanted to do is actually, now we've talked about the pitfalls and why projects are so complicated, is then let's address the other elephant in the room about why do technology projects fail? That was a question I got. Huge question. Lots of places to start here. I mean, there's the usual around not managing scope, not managing budget, not managing stakeholders, maybe setting expectations wrongly in the future, at the beginning of the project. Maybe it's just not the good time for the project to the company to actually use this technology. There's a lot of reasons why technology projects fail. But what I want to do here is actually I want to take a slightly different slant on this, because actually this question was sent to me directly, and I want to, again, this could be a whole session in itself, but I'll give you my view on how we set up projects successfully, because it all goes back to how do you start a project in the right way. So what I'm going to do now is actually show you the key technology team, which is based on this 5-star model. I love the 5-star model for how you have a technology leadership team. So as you'd expect, who are the 5 leaders you need on your project? Starts with the project manager. Everyone knows that, right? You have to have that project manager to make sure that the project is delivered well. Everyone's going to expect that. And then secondly, the point of the project manager, just actually before I move on to the next one, the whole project manager is making sure that they have accountability and responsibility for the whole project, delivery of the project. So I put that right up front, up top, because there's a lot of roles I've seen out there where the project manager might be shared between 2 different roles, and they might have more than one leader looking after the project. And this is a challenge, folks. It's like having any company. You only have one CEO of a company. You only have one leader of a government. There's only one president. There's only one prime minister. The reason for that, they might have a strong team behind them, but ultimately you just have that 1-point lead for any companies, departments, any key teams that need to deliver something. That's why we need to position our project managers as that key role responsible for the overall project. They need to look at everything that's going on and then making sure all the stakeholders are aware. So the project manager can't be successful without the sponsor. So you must have a project sponsor. Could be 2 people, by the way. This is where I'm actually seeing it work successfully with 2 sponsors, as long as they're very closely working together. So in a technology project, this is typically a IT sponsor or technology sponsor to a VP or director level, but then also a business sponsor, especially where a technology project is delivering a business product or change. You can have 2 sponsors. That can work quite well, as long as they're very closely aligned, typically always meet together with the project manager and always attend the steering committee meetings as well. That can actually work really well. But ultimately that sponsor or sponsors is accountable for the overall project. It can also be delegated. So sometimes the sponsorships at the C-suite level, the CEO, CFO, the C-suite, the CMO, for example, CIO as well. So they might delegate that down to one of the senior directors or senior VPs in the company. And again, that can work well as long as there's that communication channel going up to that overall sponsor. What I would say is be aware of what's driving the project. So I did mention how you can have 2 sponsors in this role, but just be really, really careful. But if budget is your most important driver for the project, then who's providing that budget? So if one of the sponsors is in IT and they're providing the budget, then ultimately they're going to have accountability for that project success, and that because it's driven by budget. However, if, say, for example, you decide the project is around business functionality, we're creating a new business workflow, introducing a big ERP system like Workday, or a new ERP system, implementing Salesforce, for example, there's a business process benefit coming out. It might be revenue growth, for example, or better customer service. So if that's the driver, then maybe the business sponsor has final decision. So just be careful when you have 2 sponsors to make sure you know very clearly how decisions are made. Okay, so who's number 3 in the technology leader list? That would be the technical lead. So the technical lead looks after all the vendors, the technology. They make sure all the resources in the technical side are aligned and delivering. Typically, a technical person has experience in the technology before, when they've used it before. They also help with the performance testing, make sure the cutover is going to be managed, the product launch is going to be managed from a technical point of view, make sure the data is all there, make sure the integrations are working well, make sure the architecture is well designed. Again, they look after the technical side of things. But this person must be partnered with a functional lead, a business lead. And I don't want to entertain the idea of a technology project doesn't need a business lead. There's always a business impact or a process impact with a technology project. So it might be less of a role, but you need this functional lead as well. So the functional lead, they represent the customer, the client. They create the product. They make sure the product is doing exactly what we want it to do. They also look after the business process changes, any business process flows. They'll also look after user acceptance testing, UAT, and also the defects. If we've got some defects in testing, how do we make sure that they're categorized correctly? Are we doing the right level of testing to make sure this product meets what we need to do? They'll also help define the benefits of a project to make sure that ultimately gives the product gives exactly what's needed, stated right up front in the vision. So helps recognize and highlight the benefits. So when going back to that previous slide, we were talking about the goals. The functional lead is really important in making sure we help the team understand the goals of why we're doing the project. Then the fifth lead in a technology project is sustainment. So again, I spoke at the beginning around projects are unique endeavors and have an end date. They're a fixed period of time. So what happens after the project finishes? Who takes ownership of that project, that product that you deliver as a project? So this is where the sustainment lead, sometimes called the operational lead or the operations team, that role needs to make sure we're managing that product ongoing, someone to look after it, keep it alive, but also make sure it's supported, and then can deal with changes. Guarantee any technology project is going to have some iterations, improvements, some upgrades over time. So this is where that sustainment lead comes in after the project's finished to make sure that that product stays current and keeps giving the value that we promised in the first place. So you're probably asking, why is this sustainment lead on the project? Why wouldn't we just involve them at the end? And there's a huge benefit to having the sustainment lead throughout the project because they get knowledge of what's being built. They see the workings and the testing, the communication we do on a project. They get inside knowledge on what we're delivering. So by the time we come to product launch, there's no surprises. Their team is already ready to pick up the project, deal with any questions. They've been involved in the project throughout. Ideally, get them involved in testing so they get hands-on keyboards working in the new technology. And so by the time we actually come to go live, they can pick it up really quickly. This role is often forgotten. The amount of times I come into a project to help accelerate it or help reset it, and we've not involved the sustainment team, which sometimes involves the additional budget because we're not budgeted for that team to pick up the work afterwards. Again, the total cost of a project includes the ongoing support. And this is where the sustainment lead can help. So in summary, again, they're going back to that question around why do technology projects fail? Many reasons, but without the right team setup, leadership setup, this is one of the key reasons. So always make sure you have these roles. They may be shared for smaller projects. Maybe you don't have 5 people. Maybe it's only 3 or 2, sometimes 4 people sharing roles. That can be done as well. But certainly more larger projects, you need 5 people with a team supporting them in each of these key lead roles. But you must have these five roles on the project to set up your project for success. So hopefully that was useful. And let me just go back to the questions here as well. Let me just check into the chat coming in. Just check the questions and the comments. I'm still getting used to the technology here around streaming on LinkedIn Live. So it's always interesting to try and work between the different screens and all the different platforms and how the questions come in, because they can tend to come in from different angles here. But I think I've got everything. Yep. Just reiterating the importance of a project manager. There's also a question coming in around, so a question around 2 in the box, where you have a project manager on the client side and a vendor side. So how does 2 in the box project management work? So again, this is a common practice I see is we have two in the box leadership because we often engage vendors to deliver a technology because they know most about it. They have the most expertise and they have a huge value to play in delivery of the technology. But what I would say is ultimately there's someone who needs to hold the vendor accountable and partner with them to make sure the project is successful. And that's where the project lead comes in on the company side. So if you're working with a vendor, the two in the box can work very well. I've done it myself with vendors and making sure the vendor is accountable for their vendor delivery. But then the project manager makes sure not only the vendor has what they need, but is also bringing other aspects of the project as well that the vendor's not going to be looking after. So typically the vendor from a technology side doesn't look after the business process side and the functional aspects. They also don't necessarily look after the other integrations, the other data that they might be bringing into the system. They're relying on the company to do that, and that's where the project manager comes in. So ultimately, yes, two in the box can work as long as ultimate decision making and ultimate accountability falls to the project manager, working very, very closely with the vendor. And then the project manager would report up, perhaps with the vendor, but the project manager reports up to the sponsor and the steering committee. And also sometimes there's some information in the steering committee which the vendor should not see, typically around budget information around the project and the client. So the vendor may not be needing to see that information. So the project manager would take ownership and responsibility for talking through that budget with the steering committee. So yes, thanks for the question there. So yeah, in summary, two in the box does work as long as that have that clear accountability about who does what between those two roles. And ultimately accountability for the project and delivery as a whole falls to the project manager. But yeah, thank you for the question there, and hopefully that was helpful. And folks, reach out to me if you have any questions on anything I've covered today. Feel free to just send me a DM, reach out on email. Always happy to help. Yep. So I'm just looking through the other comments coming in. I think we've covered everything for today. Good session. Yeah, covered a lot of ground. Always want to make sure I give you as much value as possible by sharing a lot of content. So what I'm going to do now is just move out to the last slide I have here, which is just a reminder really for if you're going to make sure your technology projects are delivered well, there are 9 key steps that you need to make sure you have in your projects. So yes, there's the traditional project delivery methodology, and whether it's PMP or Prince2 or Agile, Waterfall, Scrum, Kanban, these are all project delivery methodologies, absolutely critical. What I'm talking about here is the key aspects, the key framework steps that you need to go through to make sure your project is implemented successfully. So these 9 steps are what I've pulled out of all my experience of projects to make sure that we build projects and then set up projects for the success in the right way, regardless of the methodology. This is not dependent on any specific methodology. So in a future session, I will actually go through this in more detail, but if you want to copy this, please reach out. Happy to share this with you. Again, my goal is to make sure that you have enough information to make your technology projects successful. And we'll just do a quick check on comments. So nothing else has come in. So I take that as a good sign. We've answered all the questions. So once again, thank you for joining me on the LinkedIn Live Ask Me Anything. Really appreciate your questions coming in. And I'll see you again next week for a more in-depth questions and answer on anything about technology and technology projects. In the meantime, have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.